Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. I guess today I wanted to have another chat, I guess, about some concepts and intentional communities that I've been thinking about. And I guess specifically, I'm going to get into some of my ideas around, like, I don't know, maybe labor division or specialization, or maybe even reasons that we should be careful about allowing too much specialization. But I think that's what I'm going to get into. So if that's interesting, stick around and we'll talk about that some. I guess the first thought I have is, why would I be talking about this? Well, in all the times that I've been thinking about how what I would want out of an intentional community, part of the part of the problem is that if you have too small of a number of people and everybody is specialized, what do you do when that person is injured or traveling or otherwise just unavailable, or is even gets overworked and he can't keep up with the workload and compared to other stuff? Well, obviously the answer to that is you need everybody to have a backup at the very least, or support. So there has to be a limit to how much specialization goes on. And I guess that's going to be fine because there are a lot of skills that overlap. I mean, somebody who mostly takes care of one kind of animal, I guess, is not going to have a hard time backing up somebody taking care of other animals. They're going to understand most of the basic concepts that are common to animals. And but that's also not exactly the only thing I'm talking about. It's not just a division of labor thing. There's so much more to this topic. So how would it work? Would there be a division of labor? Well, the less people you have, the harder specialization becomes, and everybody just kind of has to do what they can anyway. The bigger you get, the more you have the ability to engage in specialization. Would you want somebody that was the cook, that they took care of cooking for, I don't know, 15, 20 people, whatever you had around? And it would just be that person that they'd pretty much do that. They might want to do some of their own gardening or things. I'm sure that they would do that. But is that sufficient? And does everybody most of the time have enough general knowledge of cooking that if the cook gets sick or needs to go on vacation, somebody else could step in and more or less put some meals together that everybody can eat? Sure, that would be a possibility, but is that ideal? Is that what you want? Do you want the same chef? Does the chef want to always be the chef? Like, is it a rotational thing? These are all questions that I guess every community is going to have to answer for themselves. Um, but I guess more than the division of labor in a situation like this that I want to get to is I want to get to, I guess it's almost spiritual, and not in a woo woo sense, but I guess I just define spirituality as the understanding that our existence is part of a whole greater than ourselves, realizing that there is more to life than just me, and that I am a participant in a holistic group or a holistic system that is outside myself. And that understanding, I guess, to me matters. It matters to me that I'm a part of something. It matters to me. Like I often use, I may have done it in videos already where I compare our existence to what if a cell stops doing its job? Like when we need to be unique. I think it was the unique video I covered it. Our individuality. We uh, we have our role to do, and if we don't do it, the whole suffers. And if enough of the cells in our body misbehave, we actually can get really sick, or it can get even worse than that. And I think the same holds true in something like a community. If you have too many people that don't know their place and aren't engaged and part of the community sufficiently, then will that be a cell that could lead to sickness? Could that cell spread its sickness to your other cells? And could all those cells then collectively cause, um, and actually, a morbid condition in a community? And I guess one of my thoughts to preventing that is a really holistic integration, a way of ensuring that people understand everything that goes on. And I guess one of the ways I do that would be to maybe a periodic requirement. that every so often you have to do some form of every job that is there. And I guess I wrestle with this for a few different reasons because I'm not entirely sure everybody could do every job. Like, we're not going to have children, building, putting up, roughing in, rough timber walls on houses. Like, children just, they're not equipped for that. They don't have the patience. The risk is too high. Like, so I guess there's going to be certain exclusions due to capacity. But I also think there are going to be things that it's going to be a real struggle for people that I think still needs to be done. Like, for example, keeping animals. Keeping animals is a that's a tough one because I believe animals feel pain. I think it's pretty clear they feel pain. They have desires to do things that are beneficial. They have desires to avoid things that are problematic, and they seem to have memory. They have an experience, and I'm not going to go so far as to say I believe that puts them above like the right of being used as a food source, but because look, life got here by eating other life. There are so few forms of life form that can do it without any other life. Like, we're all built on a food chain, and that's unbroken. And I come to terms long ago with the fact that there's nothing I can do to survive except eat life. And I guess I have some weird beliefs that I'm not convinced that plants are unaware. I don't like. I think we have organisms that show certain preferences, certain choices. I think they do things that it'd just be really hard to understand how they're doing it if there isn't some level of choice being made somewhere. Um, and so I got over my concept of we're eating something alive long ago. Well, not that long ago, a few years ago, I guess. I went vegan for a while and I had that experience. And it was important to me to have that experience. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't be vegan. I don't care what you do. I care about the journey. I care that whatever we're doing it thoughtfully with intention in a way that we care about how we're affecting everything else. That's what I care about. Are you doing your best to be as considerate, responsible, and preservatory of all of the resources that you're engaged with? Are you trying to make it sustainable for the next people? Do you think about these things? This is what I think is important, and that's why I think this concept is important. Animal keeping, I'm not against it. Life must survive. My prime directive of me as an individual is I want to survive, and just as that animal is probably the same thing. And so a certain amount of cruelty just exists in the food chain, and there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is other things like free range the animals. We can treat the animals well. There's no need to abuse animals. There's no need to keep animals in a way to where they're afraid of their predators. They can be kept wholesome and free, and they'll actually be healthier and therefore produce better meat because they won't be stressed out. They won't be overcrowded. They won't have predators to contend with. Like, you'd have to keep, anything that's you don't want to, let uh, something that's going to attack your chickens. You're not going to cage them right by your chickens. Your chickens are going to be scared all day. That'd be horrible. And so there's a lot of things you can do to minimize the stress on the animals, but I also want to minimize the stress on the humans. And as counterintuitive as I think this is, I think one of the answers to that is for humans to experience the slaughtering process. Now, are there going to be some souls that are literally they are just never going to be able to butcher an animal? That's probably a thing. And what do you do with those? Well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe our community wouldn't be that. Maybe they'd be more suited in a vegan community. Why would they be in a community where we eat meat anyway if they didn't want to honor that process, if they didn't want to engage in that process? And so I guess maybe it would be an off put to some if it was like every 3 years you would actually be required to participate in slaughtering and butchering an animal. Maybe that would be an off put. Maybe that would be too much. But I also think with that person, they get their hands dirty and they know where their food comes from. And I'm not saying that as a cruel thing. I'm saying that as a place of giving them the source of gratitude for it. Because how do we become grateful for the life that is enabling us if we've never taken it. And I'm not saying it's an easy or fun process. When I was a kid, it was not terribly uncommon for it to be my duty to be sent out back. The most obvious time I can remember was my brother found a nest of rabbits, just little baby rabbits, and they were babies. They were helpless. Um, and the rules of the jungle are once they're taken from mom, I won't take them back anymore. And so we bottle fed them, and it was about 2 or 3 days. They were just so young, and I want to say there was like 5 or 6 of them. I don't remember for sure, but um, it started looking bad. There was 2 or 3 that started looking like they might make it, but the rest they were skin and bones. They didn't even get up on their legs. They just kind of like wiggled around on their side, and it was brutal. And I was the eldest son of the house in a rural community, and that's it's the eldest son's job to put animals like that out of their misery. And so I would be tasked with taking those animals. Now, in fairness, my dad was a good man. He took care of actual pets that we had himself. Anything that we had fallen in love with, he took care of himself. So I wouldn't say I was tortured, but I was taught the responsibility of when you kill an animal. And while it is kind of a traumatic memory, and it's not the only time I was sent out back to put animals out of their misery. Is That's what we called it. And but it gave me an appreciation of what it was to interfere with life. Because the first time was because my brother had brought home the rabbits, and I had no hand in that. But I didn't go out and touch animals that were in a nest. I didn't interfere with that because I understood the outcome. Mom needs to take care of those. We are not a good substitute for mom. And ultimately, that entire rabbit litter died. Not one of them made it, by the way. I mean, I was sent out in 3 different rounds, actually. I think it was 6 then, actually, now that I think about it, because I was sent out in 3 different rounds. And anyway, um, but I have an appreciation for what happens when you interfere with nature when you don't understand it. I grew an appreciation of what it is to take a life so that I could eat. Um, and that was part of that process, and that was important to me. And I think it is one of the things that caused me to grow into ultimately, at some point for a while, I was vegan. And I think that's part of what pushed me into that. Was I had that experience, I had an understanding and appreciation for it, and at a point in my life I thought I could do more, so I did do more. And I guess for me, in my own personal journey through how I was going to settle on my relationship with food, um, I came to realize that I wasn't so sure that it mattered. I started studying more about like plant life. Mushrooms in particular are interesting. It looks like it is very, very strange, but there may be communication of trees that occurs through mold growing under the ground. And that's amazing to me, because one of the ways that we think of this is that, like, when a forest fire starts on one side of a forest, trees on the other side start reacting. Things like pine cones will start closing up in an attempt to try to seal the seeds that are inside the pine cone. And so, like, all those prongs that come out, and when a pine cone falls, it opens over time, and those seeds can come out then. Well, if it closes those up, sometimes it can protect those seeds from the fire. And how does the tree know to do that? How does a tree on this side of the forest know about the fire over here? How does it happen? And as I learned more and more about those concepts, I started realizing that if trees are communicating and I'm eating something off of a tree, how does that tree feel about me eating its apple? I mean, consider, like, we all know the Wizard of Oz, right? Like, you go up, you pick the apple off the tree, and the tree just starts throwing apples at you. It's like, get the hell off my fruit. Is that a thing? Do trees have feelings? Just because they don't have a nervous system. See, right now we think because they have no nervous system, that's the only way we understand feels might get transferred through a body. That's the way we understand our body, our consciousness. We don't understand the mechanics of plants. Hell, we don't even know for sure that what we think is going on in our body. We're finding these microtubes all throughout our body that have quantum effects in them, and we have no idea. Maybe these quantum effects are what's really going on with our brain, and something going on in our brain is just the interface of these reading these quantum effects. We don't really know what thinking or consciousness is, and we don't really have any good means to rule out plants possibly being a part of that. And so that's what pushed me back out of veganism, is because I wasn't like, I can't not eat soybeans, because what if soybeans are alive, and what if soybeans have feeling, and what if I'm just growing a crop, harvesting it so that I can eat and survive, and then I still am killing soybeans? Like, so I guess at some point it became an irrelevant question to me, because I had to just accept I took life to have mine. That's what that's the way I exist. I have to take life to exist. But I also think that the depth of understanding and the way that I got here and sorted all of that out through the experience of, and there's other experience too, like hunting. I've hunted, I've, gone and, other, I mean, I've fished a lot. It's never fun slaughtering fish, but because of the mentality of me having sat there and watched rabbits suffering and then having to go put them out of their misery, when I catch a fish, I keep it in a live well, or I kill it immediately. I do not let that thing suffer. I do, like, that's just not a thing. I cringe, and I'll say stuff to people. There was a guy I was fishing with. It was a huge dilemma, because there were a lot of us that were, it was a big problem where I he, as a means of killing his fish, he just put it in a plastic bag and hung it from a tree. And to me, that's cruelty. That fish had to suffocate. Like, well, that would be like taking one of us and drowning us as a way of killing it, and it's unnecessary. You could literally go in and you can bludgeon its head to shock it, and then you can cut its main vein going into its head, and a fish will bleed out very, very quickly. And it shouldn't feel the cut, because you should have knocked it out with a bludgeon to the brain. And that's how I kill fish. And I do it effectively. I do it with thought and purpose, and then I eat the animal. Um, and uh, and I'm grateful for it, because that means something gave its life so that mine could go on. And I think that's an important understanding that we have, and I think that's one of the things we need to think about with intentional communities, is how do we teach people these lessons that are so important, that so few of us really even understand. Um, like, where I come from is pretty normal as a country boy, but once you leave the country, nobody's killed an animal. It's apparently unheard of. Even the people that have, when they, like, I've gotten the looks of shock and horror when I've talked about just that I've killed fish to eat, like, and that's shocking to people. People that eat meat will be shocked over it. Like, it's it just strikes me as so odd that people are so far removed from that act that we don't know. So I guess this is one of those. I guess this is one of those big questions. How hands-on do you want people to be? How integrated in the community you want to be? How much do you want the lessons of the community to be spread throughout? And how much do you want people to be reminded of the values that we share, the respect that we have for food and land? Because I guess I just believe that everybody's going to have to go out, and sometimes they're going to have to pull some weeds, and sometimes they're going to have to harvest something, and sometimes they're going to have to sow some seeds, and sometimes they're going to have to tend to those things, because we should all understand where our food comes. We should all have an appreciation for what gets that done. And I really, really, really believe that. And and I guess that creates a problem with specialization, right? Like I guess it's not a true problem. Like you can still specialize. Like I still I would I love the idea. I would love to just have crafting outbuildings everywhere. I would want wood shops. I would probably even want a metal and forge shop. Like and I would want people that knew how to do it with tools that weren't destroying the environment. I want to do it with methods that are reasonable and sustainable. And I think that's doable because there's no reason we can't make a kiln and make our own charcoal and fire our own pottery that we dug our own clay out of the ground. And everybody should be aware of that process. Everybody should know how to make a cup at least, like, because if you know how to make a cup, you at least know the entire process. You at least know what it is to make the other things we have and need, and you have some basis and foundation. It also gives people the broader experience. How do you know you're in your right specialty? Or what happens when you thought you liked that and you're a couple years in, you don't want to do it anymore? Like, I mean, we have to have the ways for people to experience the other options. I mean, I love cooking, but am I going to love cooking forever? Am I just going to want to be the chef? I love gardening. Like, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like all of this work. Um, but I also like talking. I don't know, man. I'd want to be, I don't know, interacting with people. Like, but we'll have social things. We'll sit around the fire and talk and have good conversations, and that'll be fine. But I just think all the other things, I think there's a need for people to know. And sure, some people are just gonna not work, but not that they're not gonna work. Like that would be yeah, that's not happening. But not there are some things that some people won't be able to do, and that's a problem you'll have to deal with. What is the valid plan? I mean, is it right? You just rotate people through jobs. You maybe, you know, 9, 10 months a year, you're, doing what you do, and maybe throughout the course of the year, you have a few days in this area, a few days in that area, just to move you around to keep you engaged with the community and to keep people engaged with you. People become doing your job, and you'll be in charge of helping people with whatever your area is, and it'll be a good way, like it'll be like all these little micro cross apprenticeships that everybody will have a general idea what to do, and if somebody needs help, then other people will at least have enough skills to be able to help them reasonably. They'll have enough understanding to help them when they need it, or maybe though that's how they'll learn what they're meant to do. Maybe somebody never would have known they were supposed to be a like that the woodworking was going to be their thing until they went into the wood shop and realized that it was the greatest thing that they never knew they were missing out on. And we don't get those experiences so much in the specialization of labor that we have today. If I wanted to go learn a new skill, I got to spend like 3 grand to go take a class and buy supplies for it. If I want to learn wood shopping, it's gonna cost me like fucking fortune, right? Like, how do people learn a skill like that? You can't just go and buy a room full of tools and like that'd be even more expensive to learn it that way. What, you're gonna buy the tools, see if you like it first? Like that's crazy. And so I just think it's a great way to deal with community development. I think it's a great way to deal with interaction and social engagement. I think it builds and bonds community. I think it shares the values of everybody and the value they see in their work, because if somebody goes and butchers an animal and they're taught about the appreciation that goes into all our food and all the care that goes into it, seeing the animals not tortured, that's another thing that it would be a shared value then, right? The appreciation that, like, I mean, I know people talk all the time about um, this being associated with like Native Americans and their ritual practice over valuing the animals that they slaughter for their food. Like, I would almost want to have like something similar, not because I think it's spiritual, just because I I just think it's worth being grateful. I think it's worth having the appreciation for what's going on. And I think it's worth having the understanding of everything that's going on. I think that's one of the problems with the ignorance in our society is we only know what we know and we don't even know anything else anymore. There's no general information. There's no critical thinking. There's no see and how did I get past that? Well, when I was a kid, I was expected to help out when we were doing drywall. I was expected to help out when we were working on the car. I was expected to help out when we were cleaning the garage. I had to learn all of that. I was expected to kill my own fish when I was fishing. I had to bait my own hook. I put that old worm on there. I learned how to, how to hook a minnow without killing it so it continues swimming. I had to do all of that myself. And it was the greatest thing. There was no free rides. And then I got to be an adult who now I can solve problems. I can do things. I can change tires. I can fix drywall. I don't have to spend outrageous amounts of money at like 150 bucks an hour for somebody to come to my house and like fix a drain that's clogged because I can just do that. And I worry that society hasn't been done like this for most of my lifetime. Like what I had, my friends didn't have that experience. I had one friend. He always had to go chop wood on the weekends too, but that was about the extent of how far he had to go. But that like all winter long, that's what we did in the winter. We just chopped wood in the winter. That's because you do it while the sap's hard. Like and you just chop away, and that's how winters are spent. It's how you stay warm. You move around throwing wood around. um and and that's how we learned was we did everything ourselves or as much as we could. We fixed our own tractors. We did everything, and I think that's one of the things that has been lost in our society. We aren't integrated so much. We go to work, we work with people that know only what we know. We don't even really like talking about people that don't know what we know because we'll start talking and then we're confused. We don't know what they're talking about because they don't see the world the way that we do. We're in different professions with different friends, and how do we get along like that when we don't really understand each other's world anymore? Like maybe this is one of the answers to unity. Maybe this is one of the answers to why we seem so divided in the modern day is because we didn't spend time learning about each other at all. Well, anyway, I feel like I've been talking about this for a while. I do think it is interesting to get specialization a great deal of thought as far as intentional community. But there's some of my thoughts on it. Why I think specialization isn't necessarily the absolute end all be all answer for a situation like an intentional community. And and I guess that's what I have to say about that. So I guess until next time, then be well.